podcast. Hey, welcome back to the show.
Welcome.
I'm welcoming you back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, what do you think of these week's chapters?
I like them. The story progresses, and I like the direction it's going for sure.
Yeah.
I really like that it's turning into an adventure, kind of pretty unique, because we're just as ignorant as the character. We learn in these chapters that his name is
Mr. West.
Mr. West.
I guess we call him John West.
John West. So I guess we start calling him
it's
John.
It's a pretty good
now.
Western name, but he's in the medieval times.
Yeah. But yeah, I like how Brandon Sanderson is able to, I don't even know how to explain it, like make it seem like a fantasy world, mainly because us along with John don't really know what's going on. That rhymed.
We and John don't know what's going on. Wonderful poetry. You can be in this book with your poetry.
Yeah, because like in last week there was the things with the offerings that just randomly disappeared. It's like, okay, so is there like magical creatures actually in this world? And then in this chapter there's a couple things that happened. There was one where Cephawin like touched a rune and John was like, did that glow? No, it must have been like a trick of the light. And then they made another offering, a couple berries, and when John wasn't looking, the berries disappeared. Yeah. And then there was some leather like intertwined in like a pattern, and they were like, "Oh, that's proof that there's whites following us." And John was like, "Did she just like do sleight of hand?" And so we're along with him, kind of like wondering, like, is this dimension close enough to Earth that there isn't magic, or is it close enough to it seem like it's Earth, but there is magic? I don't know.
It does seem like it's throwing us through those loops. Like, is there, isn't there? He's a wizard. He's not a wizard. I mean, it's pretty obvious. He's saying he's a wizard, but he's just like saying it to impress the people. But they don't even know what that word means.
Yeah,
that was
funny. Yeah, so there's a part in these chapters where John was talking to Cephawin, and he tries to come clean with her, but in a weird way, because he makes some discoveries about himself. And then he decides he wants to help Cephawin get back her brother, Wyrum, I think his name is. If I'm remembering correctly, Ryan, something like that.
It's more like, do we know how to pronounce it?
Yeah.
But something like that, yeah.
Something like that. And he tells her that he's a wizard, and she's like, what the F is a wizard?
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious.
So he's like, magic person, casting spells, incantations.
Yeah, he had to kind of go through all the different names that a wizard could go by to find one she understood.
And I don't remember what she calls it. She's like, do you mean runerin or something like that? Like someone who writes inscriptions? And he was like...
Yeah, it was something like that. Again, I don't know how they pronounce it, but something like...
Yeah, something like that.
Runerin.
And then she's like, do you mean this? And he was like, sure.
Yeah. We'll go with that just for the sake of it.
But the memories that John gets back in these chapters, I think, adds a lot to the story that's just making it more and more interesting. So we left last week off with they go to see who these men are that came to as messengers, and John's initially thinking that they're going to help him. But when he sees one of them, it like jolts a memory. And we learn that it's Ulrich Stomfin who wants John dead.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of where we left it. We don't really know why. But in a flash of memories, we learn that Ulrich is head of the Seattle branch of the Fabian Augments cartel.
Yes.
So he's like this big crime boss. And apparently it's nationwide or maybe even international, because it just said the Seattle branch. So if there's just a branch in one city...
Oh, so you think that the cartel is spread out everywhere, and he's just the Seattle branch?
Because he's the head of a Seattle branch, so it's just a city.
Yeah.
So it's not even like... He's not even like, oh, the Washington branch. It's like just one city. And Seattle, maybe in his... I don't know how big it is. I never viewed Seattle as like a big city.
I guess it's a big enough city, but it's probably not as big as like Chicago, definitely not New York or anything like that, but maybe it's a medium-sized city. I've never looked it up at myself. I've never been there either. So I was like, Seattle, sure.
Yeah, same here. So that's interesting. So that's a big reveal. So we know now, and John kind of freaks out at this. He's like, "How do I know?" And he has all these memories of like what the Augments cartel is, because apparently, and this seems crazy to me. Like I wonder what this world he's turned into is. So there you can get augments, but they're like insanely expensive. And the augments we learn are like when John was being attacked by the knife, it didn't cut him. The nanobites that are in his blood that help him to be healthy. And there's a bunch of different augments that you can get, and they're super expensive. And so there's a cartel around loaning money to people so that they can get these augments, and it's kind of like loan sharking.
Yeah, it sounds like exactly like loan sharking. You can get these augments through us, but it'll act super nice or something. But then, probably like, but we're gonna chop your left foot off if you don't pay us back or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
and they didn't talk about that, but that's kind of what you assume when you hear cartel.
Yeah, and he says like you end up owing them favors for the rest of your life. So I guess they'll let you get all these augments and then maybe like turn you into hired muscle. Like now that you have all these crazy abilities,
they're almost this. They're kind of just a wild connection. They're almost like Captain Crow from Dress. Like they give you these things, but then they expect you to like do their dirty work for you.
Yeah, totally. And John initially is really freaked out by that he knows all this, because he gets all these memories by seeing Ulrich, and the person with him is Quinn Jericho, which is Ulrich's enforcer and right-hand man. And he's like, am I part of the cartel? Like, why do I know so much about these people?
Yeah. When he was freaking out about this, I was definitely thinking, like, is he one of the people who's in deep with them? Like,
like he's trying to run away.
He has all these augments because I started going down this whole rabbit hole when I was reading, thinking like he got the augments from the cartel, and because he didn't pay back or wasn't paying it back quick enough, that Jen was a casualty of that. Maybe that was one way, and then maybe the reason he's in this dimension, and then he finds out that Ulrich and Quinn are in this dimension because they're chasing him. Maybe we'll find out that was wrong. But that was the whole little thing I went through, trying to figure out what was going on in this book.
Yeah. There's one thing I like about this is it's just like a total mystery. Like,
we
don't get any background because the character doesn't know their background. We don't know anything about the world because the character doesn't know, because John doesn't know anything about the world. And so it kind of seems like we're discovering everything alongside John, which I like.
Which is a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah.
He did like it. Brandon has done a really good job in this book in like creating something that is like familiar to us, like just reading the title thinking like, oh, the medieval guide to England. So you think you go into it like knowing what's like generally what you're getting into, but totally throws you a curveball.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I think this story definitely has a little more, I don't know if I'll call it serious, but Tress had more of like a silly thing. Seems kind of crazy, but things are obviously gonna work out in the end.
Yeah.
But this story is quickly becoming, I think, a little more realistic and grown up, I guess, because when something pretty crazy happens. Something pretty crazy happens.
Something crazy pretty. I like that better.
Something crazy pretty happens. But right after he recognizes Ulrich, he kind of pulls Cephalin into a side room, and he's like, we gotta, like, these guys are crazy. They're not my friends. Like, I don't know who they are. And then she's like, well, they kind of have like an argument, and they hide from him. And then Ulrich and the Thane, who is the lord of this village, kind of get in a little tiff. It's not like a full-on argument, but the Thane thinks that Ulrich is just a messenger for the Earl, and so Ulrich starts making demands, because he's like this big cartel boss, and he's used to being in charge.
Yeah, he's probably got a lot more like people at his disposal to enforce his will than just Quinn.
Yeah,
but I think you're right. It's still. Yeah. He expects to get what he asks for because people fear him and all that.
Yeah, and of course Thane's like, well, this guy's just the Thane's like, this guy's just a messenger. Like, I don't care. Like, I respect. He's basically like, I respect the Earl, but you can't tell me what to do. And then that kind of makes Ulrich lose his temper.
Yeah,
in a pretty creepy way. So he pulls out a gun, like a futuristic gun that is apparently. John has another memory flashback upon seeing it that it's a handheld gun that is strong enough to punch through steel.
Yeah, Holy dang.
So I'm like, holy crap! Like, so their technology is insane, obviously, because they can travel to different dimensions. But
Yeah.
and they have like these crazy augments. But I was like, okay, of course, yeah, their guns are going to be super powerful. And then he kills one of the Thane's guards, and it's like this big explosion. Because
Yeah, I mean, if you think
he
about it from like their perspective, never have hearing a gunshot. They've probably never even heard a cannon. I don't think they even have cannons.
yeah.
I mean, I think I'm mixing my history up a little bit, but I can't imagine if you're just not expecting that, then you're indoors and suddenly just someone fires off a round when you are used to only bows and arrows and stuff. Like that would be quite shocking.
Seriously. And actually, so they haven't discovered gunpowder yet in this, at least in this world. There's one of the excerpts from the Frugal Wizard's guidebook. I don't remember which chapter it's in between, but it says that they try to only sell dimensions for you to go to that haven't discovered gunpowder yet. Like they work with steel and like maybe build castles and stuff, but they haven't discovered gunpowder.
Yeah, pretty interesting that they do that.
Yeah. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about, kind of going off a side note here. I am questioning the ethics of this futuristic world.
Right? I've had thoughts about that too.
So one, there's like apparently this pretty huge cartel that seems pretty powerful. We learn later on the way that they're kind of combating that. We'll get to that probably in a minute. But what I wanted to focus on when I started questioning their ethics is this company, Frugal Wizards, is selling these dimensions and says you can do pretty much whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to? We can put you where there's like a plague and you can become like a world hero and try to cure it, but enter at your own risk because you could still die from the plague.
Yeah, I mean, like they have the nanites, but it's not 100% guaranteed that they can protect you.
Yeah, and then they also say stuff like, or you can like go and be like this world conqueror and a god. And so it seems like they're selling what their sales pitch is go to this world and have no consequences and do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah, they seem to view these other worlds as like beneath them. It kind of feels like
Yeah,
you literally can do whatever you want. You can become like the worst dictator in history and like just slaughter all these people to get what you want, and
exactly.
that the people in your dimension won't stop you. I mean, I get the people in the dimension you bought would probably try to do something, but
And it's interesting. So there's like a little tidbit that they give is they say that all these dimensions are pretty much the same and there's not going to be anything super special. But if you do discover something extraordinary and special, they'll give you $100,000 and then you can choose a different dimension. But they said that they'll only pay you after you give up your security key and the password. So apparently, maybe it's not as easy as we think to get in and out of these worlds. Like you have to have the key or the password. So
yeah,
I imagine there's not much regulation. I mean, I'm sure governments are having a hard enough time with their own. Like people just go to a completely different world. It's probably like out of my type of thing. But this made me think of, I wonder how many people are out there that turned their world into like a Mistborn-esque, where they become like a lord ruler type figure and just.
Did we learn if the augments slow or even prevent aging? I can't remember.
They haven't explicitly said, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Yeah, because if it did slow your aging, I could see that you could make it your little world into something where you could rule for a really long time. And I wonder I wonder what happens, because it sounds like time doesn't pass any slower or faster in these other dimensions. So if like you visited the dimension you bought and then went back to the dimension you're from and then went back to the dimension you bought, like not a significant amount of time would pass. Like it would be like, it'd be like a few hours later if you left for a few hours or a few days or weeks or whatever. But it's not going to be like 1,000 years passed since you were last here.
Yeah, I agree.
You actually left for 1,000 years.
I think they even said that they're trying to get them close to parallel. So I don't know. It makes sense that they would be.
Yeah. So you definitely
similar.
you'd have a regular lifetime to rule in this dimension or do whatever in this dimension. I wonder what they do when you die. Do they just resell your dimension, or they just kind of sell it and forget it?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they resold it, especially because I think their big pitch seems to be selling medieval times. So I mean, if you think about 100 years being ruled, they probably didn't progress, not even near to the point where they are.
Yeah.
We're being able to do interdimensional travel. So Ulrich pulls out a gun, and he's pretty much showing, he's doing what you'd expect a crime boss that gets challenged to do. He just turns into a bully and proves that he's this big bad dog on the block, and so he just totally blasts this guard. And the way John described the power of this weapon, he's like, it can punch through steel, so it's going to turn a skull to confetti. So
yeah, so
it's not pretty when he shoots this guard.
That definitely would be a gruesome sight.
Yeah.
I think he even mentions that this weapon that Ulrich is using is even specifically, maybe not specifically designed, but it's strong enough to punch through the augments that he has that's protecting him from like a knife penetrating his skin. Like if John was shot with this pistol, he would most likely die as well.
Yeah.
Or at least that bullet would be going in his body, augments or not.
Exactly. So yeah, he totally kills this guard, and then he says there's going to be a change around here. So essentially saying he's taking over and he's the new boss, essentially. And then they leave, and they take Sephuen's brother with them, which I think we talked a little bit about that without explaining what we were saying, because John says that he wants to help Sephuen. We talked about that a little earlier in this episode.
Right.
So this is when it happens, that because they like John got confused because another title for the leader of the town is Little Father.
Yeah, so they had the same assumption John did, where they thought he was the father of these people.
Yeah, so they grab him and say, "We're going to take your son just to make sure that you behave."
Another classic cartel mob boss type of attitude.
Yeah, just really with fear and with intimidation and an iron fist, essentially. Yeah. So all in all, the people, I think, handle it relatively well. I mean, obviously they're scared, but they're not full on panicking. Like, they take care of, after they leave, they take care of the dead body, remain relatively calm. Like, I was expecting them to be like, "Oh my gosh, he's a god," but they're just kind of more like, they were scared, but it wasn't like full on panicking. So
yeah, which is impressive.
Yeah, which turns out it makes sense because I think they have to be pretty hardened. It comes out later in the chapter that they're constantly fighting off raiders. And they've had it just in like this, like a little bit year before. I think they had to fight off a raid like a few months ago before all this stuff happened, and like constantly throughout the year they're having to fight off raiders and bandits. And so I bet they're a little more hardened. And so even though the crazy thing happened, they're able to not completely panic.
Maybe that's why they don't panic, is because they're used to not living a peaceful life.
Yeah. So even though someone died, like they're used to probably seeing people die. It still sucks, but I think that what they're more shocked about is how he died.
Yeah, honestly. This got me thinking with the discovery of Ulrich and Quinn, if John actually owns this dimension, because I'm beginning to think he doesn't. He just thought he did because of reading the pages, but now there's a little more context. This almost sounds like it's maybe not even a world that anyone owns. Maybe it's one that the Frugal Wizard Incorporation kept for themselves, and for some reason Ulrich came there to do mischievous things.
Yeah.
But I
wouldn't be surprised if Ulrich purchased it because he wanted to rule a world.
Yeah, maybe he used his connections to purchase one that they wouldn't normally sell.
Yeah, because who knows what the rules are? Like, is it if you have money, we'll sell it to you, or do you have to like go through all these checks? Like, they don't want someone like Hitler going and just decimating a entire place. Maybe Ulrich is there when he's not supposed to be, or maybe he bought it because they'll just sell it to whoever will buy it. But who knows? So after all that happens, Sephuen's obviously upset. And views John's inability to help as further proof that he's not an elf, or however they say it. But the Thane still thinks that he is, because when they show themselves, he's all like, "Oh, this happened because we captured you, and I'm so sorry. I'll do your quest."
Yeah.
But then John kind of reassures him, and then Sephuen out being upset. She's like, "He's not an elf. He's this or whatever," and they're kind of like, "Oh, I don't believe you." So they still kind of treat him with that wary respect, I guess you can call it, the townspeople.
Yeah, definitely. Which I think it's funny that we see John give a perfect review of his hiding spot, assuming all of his reviews are out of 5. he gives a 5-star to the hiding place, despite the lack of trees.
I think they're still they even though Cephalin doesn't believe that John is any of these things, I think that she does think that Ulrich could be, because she believes she could have stopped him if John didn't restrain her with. She thinks she could have stopped him with her boasts, but obviously we know that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
At least they didn't do anything to John, so they definitely wouldn't have done anything.
That it wouldn't do anything to.
She probably just would have got shot herself or something.
Maybe they would have just got a good laugh out of it, but I don't know.
And so a quest begins.
Mm-hmm. A classic quest, I think.
Classic go save the hostage quest. So Cephalin is very adamant. She's like, give me a horse right now, little father, whose name is Aelstan, Lord Aelstan. And then she goes to meditate or whatever while she waits. So she says that she's going to need a very powerful boast to take on it.
We need to see more of these boasts or understand what these boasts are. Because so far they just seem like nonsense that don't do anything.
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is they're the equivalent to like Catholicism. Like they have like those prayers that they say.
I'm not familiar with Latin.
Oh, where they're like the ones that you get in the Bible. That's like, although I walk through the valley of the shadow of whatever, I shall not fear.
Oh, okay.
I think it's something like that. Like it's like part of their religion, and it's like a prayer or something you can say that banishes evil.
Okay, and I guess she has to meditate to get more strong prayers or boasts.
Yeah.
All right.
While she's off meditating, John is able to get his book back because he just asks for it. He's like, "Can I have my book back?" And they're kind of like, "Yes."
I was surprised at that.
I think it's because so we find out later on, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, that the main god that they worship has forbidden writing because apparently writing somehow killed the god's wife, and so he forbids his children, I guess, being the people, from writing, and I guess by extension reading. So it seems like they just want to get it out because they don't want to bring his anger, the god's anger. So they have someone that they think is a mystical something asking for them, and then I guess the not wanting to have him in the first place probably is what they were like, yeah, take him, please.
Yeah, I wonder if their plan was to just hide it away or destroy it or something.
Maybe, or offer it like they did that one page.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that other page they offered. There still is quite a lot of mystery when it comes to this world itself. Like it seems like with like all these offerings and stuff just disappearing, that you would think there is some kind of like magic going around.
Yeah, I think that I'm convinced that there's something. I'm curious to see what it actually is. I think it'll be good. We also learned about another one of John's augments. So apparently he has an augment that helps him stay awake for long periods of time.
I have to say this is probably my favorite one so far, at least for the life I live. I don't live a life like gunfire and violence and stuff, but I would love an augment that would help me stay awake.
Right. Yeah, because he gets a warning saying that his wakefulness augment will wear out and need to be recharged in like 48 hours, so he'll need to sleep. So I don't know how long it lasts, but at least 3 days, because he's been awake ever since he got there, and it was day when he got there, and now it's night, and then he has 48 more hours. So my guess is at least 3 days he can stay alert and awake.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that means like once they wear out, does he have to only sleep like 8-9 hours like a normal night, or does he have to sleep like a whole like 24 hours or something?
I had that thought too. I wondered if he would have to be out for a few days or something like that.
Yeah, and I also wonder if there's a way to like take someone's augments away, and if you do that, like say that so I'm wondering if you're in the middle of like this weird sleep wakefulness cycle, like say you've been awake for 2 days, and then someone like all of a sudden like turns off or takes away your augment, do you just like totally crash? Or if you say you have augments for like a few years and then someone takes them away, is your body just totally incapable and you just like waste away and die?
I wonder
It's like if you got hit by like an EMP burst or something that like destroys your nanites.
Maybe it's still like imagine if you were a drug addict, like you just really got hooked on something, and then it got taken away. Like your body goes through some major withdrawals, but I think you can survive it. So maybe it's something similar.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know.
Maybe like severity depends on how long you've had the augments. Like if you had them for like, I don't know, like 2 years or something, you'll be able to recover. But if you had them for like 10 years, then it's like you're completely dependent on them and there's no way you can survive.
I would think it would be more of a state of mind. Like you get used to not being able to just stay awake for 72 hours straight. You'd have to okay, I got to sleep every night now. But I mean, I can see something like with his augments that makes him stronger with I forgot what you call them. The one where whatever augment he has that prevents him from getting stabbed.
Yeah, they're like plates, like nano plates just under his skin.
Yeah, like maybe getting that taken away wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's true. Because we do know that his chest and his neck and head augments are offline.
Yeah.
So they're there, but they're not turned on. So maybe you're right. Like, because he's obviously able to function without those. But he does wonder if that's why he's lost his memory, though, because his head augment wasn't working when he got transported.
Yeah, which that's a good suspicion, I think.
If he walloped his face, but they also planned for disorientation. So I don't know. It could be a mix of both. Who knows? Yes. Oh, and then we get another piece. So when he gets the pages back, he starts reading them, and then apparently in the back of the book, The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Medieval England is like a questionnaire section that the person who's being transported can fill out. And so this is actually where we learn that his name's John, and this is where we also learn that he is a cop. Specifically, he's a specialist detective in the Seattle Police Department Anti-Cartel and Illegal Augments Division.
So it answers all the questions of why he not only has all these augments when they're super expensive, because he did mention that the only way you could get them is if you had the money for it, or you were in some sort of, I forgot what he specifically said, but if you're in the service of the government or the soldier or whatever, then you'll get your augments paid for. So it explains everything.
Yeah, how he got his augments.
And why he knows so much about the cartel. It's because he's specifically investigating them.
And he's in the Seattle department, so that also explains why he knows so much about Ulrich. He probably has studied him and spied on him and planned on how to take him down.
He's
something.
Probably one of those guys who's got a board in his office with Ulrich and the picture in the center with all the lines going everywhere.
Totally. I totally would believe that. I would not be surprised at all. It's like this dirty apartment with pizza boxes everywhere, and then just a wall like a crazy person.
Yeah, honestly. that's what I picture anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we got to learn about who he is a little bit more.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So then we kind of spins off more theories. Okay, it seems pretty obvious. He got here by little unconventional means, and he arrived apparently really soon after this big cartel boss did. And so it seems pretty safe to say that the reason John is here is to come after Ulrich.
Yeah. And I think this is where I was more having the thoughts I had earlier, why Ulrich is here, why is John here, and trying to figure out if Ulrich bought this dimension for nasty things, or he somehow broke into it without legal permission type of thing.
I kind of view Ulrich, and maybe this is putting him too much on a pedestal, but I kind of viewed him as, what's the crime boss in Dresden Files? Marconi?
Marcone, yeah.
Marcone.
Johnny Marcone.
Johnny Marcone. He's a total bad dude, but he's got resources and he's got deep pockets, and I think that's where my predictions are leaning for. My predictions are, I bet that there are some checks that you have to get through in order to purchase. I hope at least they don't just let anyone, whoever, buy a dimension, especially someone who runs a cartel. They're just going to become a terror and do genocide and awful things. I would hope that the company is ethical enough not to allow that. which makes me think that it's probably a mix of what you and I are saying. Like, there are checks and balances in place, but he did purchase it, but through illegal or criminal means.
That's one of my theories as well. One of my thoughts is that,
like, he somehow has it even though he's not supposed to, but he
yeah.
he did purchase it. Like, I don't think.
Yeah. I definitely, thinking about the little information we have about Ulrich, that all we know is that he's a boss of the cartel. Or at least he is the head of the Seattle branch, whatever that is. If there's a worldwide thing or just a domestic thing, but I wouldn't think a cartel boss would just go to another world. Like, he's not there for a vacation.
Maybe then John was getting close to being able to prosecute him. And so that was like his escape route. He was like, "Fine, if I can't run my cartel here, I'm going to go become a dictator on a whole planet." And then John followed him.
Whatever he's here for, it's nothing good.
I agree.
He's there to take advantage of this place, get something from this place, or he's running or something, but he's not there to enjoy medieval England. It's not a historical vacation or adventure.
And I have my first ending prediction.
Oh, good.
Not really like a full-on prediction, but I think the general way that it's going to end is they're going to come to a big confrontation, like these, obviously, and John's going to save them, and he's either going to die saving them, or he's going to save them and have to decide if he wants to come back to Earth or stay.
Yeah, I would have predicted that if Jen were still alive, maybe he would just go back to life with her, assuming that we are correct and that is his wife.
It also depends on like what kind of memories does he get back. Like, did he and Jen, they were married? Did they have kids?
Yeah, that's true.
Is he like really dedicated to his job and wants to go back? Or I don't know.
It's so many different ways it could still go, because Jen could be his sister or something, or maybe his partner. I don't know. But I don't know, the way he kind of feels about her. He feels sad. He misses her. So it seems like it's a little more of an intimate relationship than just like a partner. At this point,
yeah.
That'd be cool, though. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, maybe he'll develop a thing for Cephawin. I don't know how old she is. Wait, do we know? We talked about that last time, and I forgot how old they are. How old, like, Cephawin is.
I don't think she's too old.
She's probably too young for him.
I don't imagine her being older than 30. I think she's...
Oh, that's older than I have to think. I wasn't even thinking older than 18.
Oh, I'm thinking she's somewhere between, like, 18 and 25. I don't know.
But it was just her brother that John kind of talked about, like, oh, I think he's about this age.
Yeah, because at first he was like, oh, he's this, but then he realized he's like a kid. I don't know, maybe like 10 or 11. That's just big for his age.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, he's discovered as a cop, and then that discovery fuels him even more to help Cephawin. Because at first he wants to help her because he feels a little guilty because he held her back from trying to save her brother. And so he's like, oh, I feel kind of obligated to help. But now he's like, oh, I'm a cop, and my job was to fight against the cartel. So now it's like he has the duty and the guilt, and so he really wants to help Cephawin. And this is when we get the whole conversation of him trying to convince Cephawin that he is that he's a wizard.
This is hilarious to me. I really love this.
Yeah. So another thing he's figured out more about how to control his augment menu.
Yes.
And he's able to scroll through it. And that seems so trippy to me. Like, you pull up this menu.
Definitely.
And does it like block your whole vision? Can you still like see, or do you only see the menu? Because he said he controls it with blinks, and with taps on his leg, he can scroll through different things. And he tries to bring online his offline systems, and he finds out that he has vital organs augments. So I guess not only does he have augments on his skin, but also around his vital organs. So I mean, it's like even doubly hard to kill him. Yeah. But he tries to turn it on, and it says no, and then it says bring online, and it says password required. And he's like, why the heck is there a password that's on my own body?
I could see, like, you don't want people to turn it off just willy-nilly and have a password for that, but turning it on, it seems kind of funny.
Yeah. So, and he obviously doesn't know the password. He instinctively tries a couple things, which I could get into, because I mean, I have passwords that I've used so many times, like my email password. I just like know it, just like type it in.
So you just try what you.
Yeah. So maybe he just like subconsciously just like tried some things, but none of it worked, and which also makes sense, because I'm sure if So we also discovered. So I'm jumping ahead again, just a little bit, but he has another augment that allows him to like hack another person's augments and like attack them that way. So obviously, I bet his password is like insane, and it's not similar to any other password that he has anywhere else.
I think if I had a password that was directly like controlling me, I would definitely want something really good. Like, I want one of those bars you sometimes see where it's like, oh, your password is weak. It's okay. It's strong. I'm like, this password is perfect.
Right.
Like, no one's breaking into this thing.
I would want to get super fancy with it. I would want it to be not like a series of like numbers or inputs. I would want it to like tap into my brain and my memories, not have to like just think and remember things, and like the combination of the emotional and the chemical outreads of how I think about those certain memories.
Oh yeah,
that's the password, because then how are you going to hack that? You know?
Yeah, honestly,
like it has to be specifically me thinking about a series of memories in a certain way and feeling a certain way about each memory, and somehow I can chemically code that and electrically code that with my brain and the symbols and the signals in there and that be the password. So I just had to like think and then bang, 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 you know, thoughts like super fast. And then that would be the password. So for me, it'd be quick, but it's like impossible to hack.
Yeah, I definitely don't know how you would hack that at all. So, that would be insane indeed.
I don't know if the technology can allow such a thing, but
I don't see why not.
We don't know anything about this technology, so at this point, we're going to say it can do whatever the hell we want it to do.
Yes. I like it.
And he discovers even more cool augments. So he has enhanced vision, so he can turn it on and see really well in the dark. It's not perfect, but it's definitely, he can see really well. Probably like it's it's dark and it's still, I don't know how to describe it. How did he describe it? So he says, so he immediately turned on night vision and it brightened the area around me considerably, not quite to daylight levels, but it was colorized. So I kind of viewed it as like you're in a room with like a dim light bulb that's about to die or something. So like you can see pretty well, but it's not like perfect.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Pretty accurate to me, I think.
Yeah.
That's another one I would like, just so that in my late night trips to the bathroom I wouldn't stub my toe.
For real. You wouldn't have to turn on any lights either, and like I hate turning on lights when I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, gosh, because you have to go from not being able to see to not being able to see.
Yes, but I'm also a wussy because I've seen way too many horror movies and they get to me. So like I had to turn the light on because if I'm like tired and like see my outer corner of my eye, my reflection in the mirror like scares the piss out of me every time. I'm always like, it's like a jolt of adrenaline. I'm like, ugh! And then I'm like, so I always had to turn the light on. And apparently also he can zoom in his eyes 3x. So he can zoom in his vision.
Oh my gosh, I can't even.
Insane.
That would be so awesome. Okay, coming from a person who has to wear glasses and has a hard time seeing, like there's so many. That would be a life-changing augment for me. That's like, that would be an augment that if it was taken away from me, it would be like, I don't even want to live anymore. I can't see. I need to be able to zoom in. I can't do it anymore. Like, that would be like devastating.
Oh man, can you imagine? So you and I both like shooting. I think it would be really cool to have like a crosshair pull up and like that's tied to like your gun. So you just have to like look, and then like you know that if the crosshair that on your vision is on something, that's like where your gun is pointed. I think that'd be really cool too.
That would be amazing. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so obviously
I feel
super
like
helpful.
Playing a video game in real life.
Yeah. So those two augments alone are like going to be way helpful if you're a cop and trying to do stuff because you can have night vision and you can zoom in, so you can just like hide. And then he also has an augment that gives him increased sensibility and stability to his fingers. So I don't really know what the use for that would be, but he has increased sensibility and stability. So I guess sometimes if I hold my hand up, it like quivers a little bit. I don't know. It's not really doing
that
it now,
what it
but
is?
like,
It's just
so I wonder if he can like he
so
got that so he doesn't quiver. He like has a perfectly steady hand. So maybe that increases marksmanship. I don't know. He uses it later on to help him draw.
That would make sense.
So maybe he just got that because he likes to draw and he just wanted to be a little bit better at it. But he says that maybe it's good for picking locks and other delicate work. So I guess okay, yeah, that makes sense. Oh yeah, so this is what I was talking about. So the other thing we're talking about is he has a couple of surveillance upgrades that let him wirelessly hack systems. So like I think that's way cool. Like you look at a computer and like I just look at your Kindle and like hack it, or like look at your phone and be like, and like hack it. That'd be so cool. It's like a superpower. Yeah, no kidding, it is. Can you imagine security in that world though?
dude.
Like augmented people can hack into stuff. Like this just seems like, I don't know what kind of world this is, but it seems like futuristic dystopia. Like just I'm just picturing like kind of like an iRobot type of scenery where it's just like huge cities, like crime everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like pollution everywhere, and it's like just crowded, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
I kind of think about it. It would be insane. It would be like all those arguments you'll see sometimes in books where they talk about like the magic people, like, oh, the magic people need to not use magic because they can just take advantage of all of us. You think it'd be like the same thing. Like people are like, oh man, you can't give these people these augments. Like use it to hack everything. Like, nothing will be safe. They can literally just have a thought, and like all my money would be in their bank account or whatever, or all my information is just right there. They don't even have to try, type of thing. Like,
Where there's like the whole business of like countering augments, and I bet it's a big deal for. I bet that's why there's like a cartel. I bet it's like really sought after by normal people, criminal people. I bet it's like totally changed warfare. Like you can have like, you imagine an augmented super soldier in World War One just running through trenches.
oh man,
Like, it just totally change everything. So
Yeah.
this is like a totally different world.
I wouldn't want to be in a war in this augmented world. Not that I want to be in one in our world, but still.
Oh, kind of going. I don't know if we talked about this last week, but there was those nanobots that are like health things and help you like cure from diseases.
Yeah.
Apparently, it doesn't work for cancer, or I guess you have to have it in order for it to work for cancer. Because he says later on that he every October wears a pink ribbon to bring awareness to breast cancer. I'm like, you would think that they would just put nanobots in there and that would cure it. So maybe they're.
Wonder.
And then
maybe it's still a thing because since he talks about how augments are just super expensive. Maybe there's still just a ton of people who can't afford.
I agree. I totally agree with that. But then he also says, this is what I wanted to jump back to, is he says that it's offered free to babies when they're born if parents consent.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I wonder if it's like vaccines. Like some parents are like, don't nano your kids. They'll give them autism.
There probably totally is people who are just like, they have all these conspiracy theories that are probably outrageous and also maybe even got a little bit of truth to them.
Yeah.
People are just like, oh no, they'll take control of my baby and that will be their baby instead of my baby or something crazy.
Yeah, you have to be crazy though. Can you imagine like if I could give my baby something that would mean it would never get sick?
That would be hard to say no to.
That would be so hard to say no to. And there's probably like all these things, like controversies at the time, like similar to what we have as vaccines. I'm sure there's just as many controversies about nanobots. But so I bet there's like a good spectrum of people that have the nanobots. Some that got them as kids, some that got them as later on in life, and then probably a decent population size that just don't have them at all. And I bet those are the ones that have breast cancer, and I bet the people with nanobots don't have cancer. So I guess I
that
take
would be
back
my
what I said
thought.
before, like that nanobots can't cure cancer. But
that's what I would think for sure.
Oh, and also, so he can also another one of his augments. It seems like he's built a lot of his augments around being able to surveil, be stealthy, which makes sense. He's probably staking out cartels and planning stings or whatever. But he can change his skin color to like.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, to like camouflage. And it's this part that's funny that he tries to use that to convince Cephalin that he's a wizard. So he I don't know. I thought this was really funny. Because so he goes up to her and he's like he wants to show her that he can change his skin color. So he walks up, he's like, "I'm a wizard," and he like holds up his hand, and like nothing happens. And he's like, "Oh crap!" Because he forgets how to pull up the menu to like activate it. So he like pulls up the menu. He's like trying to do it, and she's like, "Oh, ridiculous!" And she walks away, and he's like trying to follow her. And he's like, "I can also see at night," but then and it's nighttime still, and because he's looking at his menu, he doesn't know there's a bush. So right after he says, "I can see at night," he trips over a bush, and she's like, "Okay, you freaking weirdo."
No wonder she thinks he's crazy and like doesn't know what he's doing.
But then finally, he finds the menu to do it, and then so he says he's a wizard, and he makes his arm turn red. And she just is like, "Oh, that's a cool trick. Like, did you just dye it or something?"
Yeah.
He's like, "What?"
I thought this was interesting because she's almost got like the mind of like she's got like more of a scientific view, it almost seems like she's psychological. Like, oh, well, wow, that's so impressive, but you just did this to do it. I've seen that trick a million times. Super unimpressed, and it's not like, wow, you really are a wizard. Like, no, you're just crazy. You just did this thing, and it made your hands red. Whatever.
Yeah, it's just like she calls it matter root dye.
Yeah.
and she's like, I've seen that done a dozen times. So apparently people die themselves. And then she's like, and using the fake knife to pretend your skin is iron. And then she's like, that was your brother's knife. And she's like, I'm still trying to decide how you figure out how you swap them out.
Like he has a perfectly like, well, that was your brother's knife. That wasn't even my knife. So how? Then she just immediately already has that response. Like, well, you somehow used sleight of hand and switched it out. I don't know how you did it, but
I imagine just being like,
yeah,
crazy lady. Like, I don't even know how to convince you.
He's definitely. We're seeing how hard it could be to like put yourself in a place of power if you were like a crazy cartel person like Ulrich, who's just gonna go around blowing people's heads off with your crazy weapon technology.
Like, if you don't have that, then how do you? Yeah. It goes back to that joke. It's like, how do you prove that you're from the future? Because like, I can see all these things like we have Wi-Fi where there's like signals going through the air that let us see things on little devices. And like, how does that work? I'm like, you push the on button. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, have absolutely no idea how to do it. I just know how to use it.
So if I were to go back in time, I would like almost instantly become the village crazy person.
Oh my gosh, 100% would be the village crazy person.
So like, there's satellites in the sky, and they're like, "Hey, crazy person."
I love the piece of art we get for when he's like, "I'm a wizard."
Oh yeah.
It's kind of because it doesn't make any sense, but it's still really cool. Like, I assume this is him. We're saying him just like almost looking at a classical wizard. He's got the big pointy hat, a cape, but he's on some sort of machine thing. Is that a nanite? That's just like blown up and he's riding it or whatever. But
yeah, so essentially you're a wizard because you go back in time and have all these technology things, and so that's how you explain it.
Yeah, seriously.
Not that it's technology.
That does go. That matches up because I mean, all the things that they said back in the day with like the witches and stuff. Like if a woman was a healer and they gave someone medicine and they healed, and oh, you're a witch. They were just idiots and didn't understand advancement and stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
It was only like the only time something like that could happen is if you were either a witch doing the devil's work or like some miracle from God or something.
Yeah, seriously. And then John does something. He snaps his fingers and it instantly makes his arm go from red back to the normal color, and that gives Stefan a little pause. But then she's like, "I'll figure out how you did it." So she's still like super skeptical. And it's funny because he does the same trick to the Thane, and he's like wide eye, like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah, he gave the reaction I was expecting everyone to be like.
Yeah. So I wonder if it's because she's like they call her a scald or whatever, where she's constantly dealing with things like this. She's probably
just seen so many like lies and sleight of hand type of things, people just playing tricks, so that she just like, doesn't believe any of it. We learned about another augment in here that I would love.
What?
He could give his nanites the command to, I guess, shave. But he could choose to not have a beard, and I guess just not even worry about. I don't know if it completely stops it growing or what it does, but talks about how he leaves the nanites with a command to keep a smooth face.
Yeah, I'm like, that's actually pretty nice.
I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
So many of these augments would just be like, that would make life a little bit easier.
Right, seriously. Oh, I forgot another augment he has is he can increase his hearing, so he can hear a lot better,
which is also just super cool.
I think it's pretty sweet.
You wouldn't even have to worry about going deaf. Just turn up your augments.
Yeah.
I want to know how that works. How do they increase your hearing?
Yeah, and so it's decided. So Cephalin decides to let him help. So then they go to the Thane, and I think it's funny when they're talking to the Thane, Elstan. So Cephalin, so you can imagine it's like Thane standing. The Thane standing is here. He's talking to John, and behind him is Cephalin. So Cephalin's standing behind the Lord, and John's trying to be all like mystical.
Yeah.
And like Cephalin's behind going like that was okay. Like, Yeah, because he's like, the thing's like, why do you want to go on this journey? He's like, you don't have to worry about me doing tricks on you anymore because they stole a thunder shooter from my dad and I need to go get it. And
Yeah,
it's just
he's
kind of
just like
like
making up this whole
just
thing. I love that. He's doing a really good job of making himself look like a fool instead of this all powerful wizard.
It's also funny. So they bring him a horse. And he's like, "What am I supposed to ride this? Like, I doubt it comes with built-in suspension or Bluetooth speakers." And then it turns out the escort, because they convince Cephalin that she can go as long as she like brings a guard. They convince her to let her bring a guard, and the Thane decides to be that one because he's the best warrior, I guess, and he says that he feels honor bound, I guess, because he was kidnapped under his roof.
Yes, he's not your typical like lord of the land where they're fat and drunk, and they tax all the peasant people so they can have fancy meals and a nice comfortable life. He seems to like really care about his life, and which makes sense because I mean, like as they talk about in a little bit, that like this whole village that he is like they're all like related, like
like the guard
was
his nephew, so
and he lost a couple of his own sons in a previous raid and all that.
And so John's kind of like, well, crap, because on one hand he has Cephalin that knows he's not some mystical creature, but doesn't know that he's not from this world. And then you have Estienne, the Thane, Elstan, who thinks that he is a mystical creature. So I'm curious to see if he's going to come clean with Elstan or if he's just going to try to keep up the facade. Because I think it's funny because as they're traveling, John keeps doing little things and making little mistakes that makes Elstan not fear him, but just kind of think he's more amusing. Which maybe I think he might be viewing him at this point more of like, oh, he's just like this mystical creature that doesn't know anything about humans, and he's just like a bumbling, more of a trickster than like a scary thing. Because it says the stupidest thing. He's like, I've ridden on the wild hunt, and I once crossed the sky in a rainbow made solid, but those both used Aelif mounts. Instead of saying, so he mispronounces the word Aelif or whatever, however they say it.
Yeah.
And he's like, this doesn't respect me. And then Thane's like, you have to earn the respect. And then he's like, so get on and hold on unless you fall, and if you fall off, you'll see more rainbows. so kind of teasing him a little bit.
Yeah.
So. And that takes us to the end of part 1.
Yeah, we get some weird art.
Yeah, I couldn't tell
what to make of it.
I couldn't tell either. It kind of seemed like a comic strip. It almost seemed like this is what you can do when you come to medieval times. Like, because it shows a wizard, someone dressed as a wizard, but using technologies, almost like he's training someone. I don't know. My favorite one is the cat. I don't know why that cat one was really funny to me. So there's one there's like a little older looking wizard dude talking to a younger wizard looking dude, and he's showing him a picture of a man going from small to really big. And then he shows him a cat, nice little, cute little kitten. And then all of a sudden it's like this massive, like, monster-looking cat thing, and the older wizard's like, ta-da! And the young wizard's like, holy crap!
That is really funny.
And then he gives them whatever it is that, the older wizard gives the younger wizard whatever it is that makes things big, and he puts it on a strawberry and eats it until he's fat. Which I thought was pretty funny. And it's just more, like, comic-type things.
Yeah. Are these the doodles maybe that John does in the margins of the...
Oh, maybe.
guide?
I don't know, maybe.
I didn't think about that earlier, but that's the best.
Yeah.
I love the title of part 2, How to Be a Wizard Without Even Trying. Because John has been trying and failing pretty good at looking like he's a wizard.
He doesn't know what he's doing. He keeps bumbling, and the people are like, okay, idiot. Like, I don't think you actually know what's going on. But yeah, so it's on the very part of chapter 11, the first paragraph. So John, while they're riding the horseback, he's not very practiced at it. He's not doing a very good job. He's trying to read and keeps dropping papers and having to get off and pick it up. And then Lord Elstan keeps looking at him, and he seemed to be losing some of his fear and replacing it with befuddled amusement. So again, I think he's trying to view him more as a mystical creature that they maybe feared, but they don't necessarily have to. He's just an innocent little trickster kind of guy that's more silly than scary.
Yeah. And that's really what it's coming off of so far. He's tried to be like all powerful and scary, but
Yeah.
just not been doing anything that's powerful or scary.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Ulrich's trotting around blowing people's heads off.
Exactly. And John uses this travel time, I guess, to try to get more clues of where he is at time-wise. Like he's trying to figure out if these are like Anglo-Saxons or Romans or who exactly these people are as far as like how they relate to Earth history, I guess. So he starts asking him questions. He's like, do you guys build castles? And then Ulrich's like, never heard of building a thing out of stone completely. Yeah. And he's like, Ulrich's even like, that seems so empty. Like you would never see your family. It would be strong though. So
doesn't quite get what a castle would be, but
yeah. And during this whole time, Cephalwin's getting really impatient. She's like trying to push the horses really hard, and they're kind of, and Elsan's like, don't worry, we pushed through all the night before, and we'll get there before they do, because they stopped to sleep, and we didn't. And then John's like, actually, they won't need to sleep because they stole an amulet of endurance from my people, and it makes it so they don't have to sleep. And then Elston says like, so you don't need to sleep? And then John says, no, I only have to meditate like once a week or something like that to recuperate my strength.
Going off of that, it sounds like he can stay awake for like 6-7 days.
Yeah, which is insane.
And he has to sleep.
Yeah, that seems pretty crazy.
That's way insane. I can't imagine how would your life just feel boring or like so long if you could stay up day and night for that long?
It seems like it would almost like double the felt time, because if you think there's 24 hours, you probably sleep for 10 of it, and then just get like 10 hours. Like, I don't even know what I would do.
Right? You'd have to come up with a whole new life to live at night.
Seriously.
I would do it though. I don't care.
Yeah, and then Cephalwin thinks that it's not magical abilities, that he chews on something called the root chicory is what she thinks, because it helps people stay awake if they chew on that.
And it's in this chapter that he kind of is still trying to figure out like why he's there, what is Ulrich doing there, and he's like trying to figure out if like he's there because he's in the middle of some police operation, or he's there to pay homage to his dead loved one, like Jen.
Yeah, his dead wifey.
But going off of what we know this far, I think it seems obvious right now anyway that he is here on a police operation.
Yeah.
And he is there to figure out whatever. Maybe he already knows what Ulrich is doing, but forgot because of whatever happened with his head. Augment being damaged or shut down or whatever.
Yeah, maybe like made it worse or something, harder to remember things.
Yeah. I wonder if when he actually sleeps, if that augment will be repaired. Like maybe when you sleep, that gives your augments or your nanites a chance to kind of reset and
like
then
reboot.
Like reboot. Yeah, exactly. So maybe he'll get those other augments back.
Hopefully.
That would be kind of cool.
I think he's going to need him to fight Ulrich.
Yeah, especially if he's already trigger happy when people's faces, so he needs that tag.
Yeah. And we also get a little sad tidbit. So apparently Jen died when she'd gone to a trip to Europe. And the way he found out about her death was her family texted him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the crap?
That's pretty messed up.
And
he does talk about like her family didn't like him, but...
Yeah, but still to find out about her death via text, like how much do you have to not like someone to say, to at least call them to say your wife's dead?
Honestly.
Like, what the crap? He said there hadn't even been a funeral. He said that. So like, what the heck even happened?
I want to know what happened.
It doesn't seem like a normal death to learn about it via text and then to not have a funeral.
Because like, wouldn't this get put to him to take care of? Like, if he is her husband, wouldn't it be his job to make arrangements? And wouldn't he be like the first person for like authorities to call? Be like, hey, your person Jen is dead.
Right.
Sorry for the last click, but you think he would be really high on the list of the people that like, authorities would contact, not just his family.
Apparently
not. For real. Like, I don't like her family. Just
based on that.
Like, they sound like a bunch of tools.
And he has other snippets of memories coming back. Like he knows that when he went to the police academy, he went late. Like he was a little older when he went. And so he's like, what have I been doing the years before I went to the police academy? So he hasn't always been a cop. He looks like he became a cop a little later. So did he become a cop because Jen died, or did he become a cop and then Jen died because he started fighting the cartel? Like,
yeah, and again, so many ways it could go.
yeah.
But do you know that he? We learned in I always get the chapters mixed up, but he was going to be like an artist.
Yeah, I think we learned that in the next chapter. Because he starts drawing, and he thinks they look bad, but Ulrich and Cephalin are like, holy crap, that looks exactly like me.
Yeah, which I thought that was hilarious. They're way more impressed by his drawing skills than his augments. Like, well, you can turn your skin red. Whatever.
I know.
But holy crap, you can draw a picture that looks exactly like me.
I know, and he's like, from where I come from, this is bad. And then Elston's like, they must draw with godly precision.
Yeah, no kidding. I wish we could see him, unless those comic strips are like his drawing, so that
that would be hilarious. And they're like, that looks just like me. Like, do you guys have mirrors?
They don't know what they look like.
And so he's still trying to reconcile because he has those memories of Jen. And he's like, I'm here to stop Ulrich, right? But then why do I feel like I'm here because of Jen? Because Jen always wanted to come. And then he's like, oh, is it a police operation or to pay homage to a dead one, like you were saying?
Yeah.
But he says whatever it was rushed because he got here half in costume, half not. His book was scattered everywhere. He ended up in a field. And so he says and he's like, his augments are offline. He doesn't have his gun. And so he comes to the conclusion that whatever reason he's here, he came here in a rush and didn't have time to properly prepare. Because apparently also part of his augments is he can store databases somehow and access them later. And he said he didn't even do that. He's like, it would have been helpful if I had stored some databases about this place so I could like at least learn about it when I get here. But he didn't even do that. So everything's pointing towards, I think most likely he's there for Ulrich on police business, maybe to avenge Jen, maybe to as part of his job. But I'm leaning more towards like part of his job and to avenge Jen. And he had to get there real quick for some reason.
Yeah. Maybe it's like one of those things where like Jen for so many years is like, oh, I would love to go visit another dimension. He's like, oh, that's overrated. I don't want to go do that. And like maybe kind of fought against it a little bit. And then now he's in this situation where it's like, oh, well, after all this time of me not really wanting to go another dimension, here I am in another dimension.
Oh, yeah. So maybe it's just making him more remember Jen than like that's actually why he's there.
That's kind of what is my suspicion.
Yeah.
I love what the book says kind of about what you might see in your dimension during this time period. But I love it. It's like, do you see castles, knights, and banners? Congratulations. You found a high Middle Ages dimension. Go have a joust. Like,
that's pretty funny.
I would not want to go have a joust unless it's loud Spartan armor or something.
Yeah. Because it's trying to give him hints of like, trying to help them figure out where he is in time. So he's like, do they have like Roman clothes on? Do you see, like you said, castles? Or are they more like
like the Vikings?
Are they like Vikings? Are they like Celtic people? And so he's like, one way you can find out is asking about their gods. Like, do their gods have similar names? And so this is when he asks about the gods, and we learn a little bit about what we talked about earlier, where their main god, Woden,
sounds like Odin.
That's what the conclusion he comes to. Yeah. He says Woden and his son Thunor, and he's like, was it Woden Odin and Thunor or Thor? And he's like, hot dang, something useful. And he's like, where'd your ancestors come from? And it turns out they came from across the sea. So he comes to the conclusion that they are Anglo-Saxons, kind of like a Germanic, and especially because they call all outsiders Walic or Walichk or something like that, which is close to Welsh. And Cephalin several times has been like, are you from Wayland or Walish or something like that? So very close to Welsh. So he's decided he knows where he is now. These are Anglo-Saxon people that live on the island of England, I guess.
Yes.
or Great Britain. I don't know. Is that what it's called? Great Britain, or is that like everything? I don't know. England.
Oh, England is good.
Yeah. And this is also when he's like realizing how, I guess, ignorant he actually is. Maybe didn't realize, because he says like he knows, the only reason he knows how to do things is because he knows how to look up how to do things. So he's like, I could like look up on Wikipedia how to do these things, but like, and then it's kind of going back to our conversation earlier, like how do you prove that you're from the future if you don't know how to create anything that we use in the future?
Yeah. he talks about that, doesn't he? Or is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, because he's like, I could teach these people gunpowder, but I don't know how to make gunpowder. But I know that if I could do an internet search, I could figure out how to make gunpowder. But obviously, there's no Wi-Fi. And then I think he even rates it. He's like, whoever did this didn't take into account that there's no Wi-Fi in these dimensions.
That's why you need those databases he was talking about, so you can just already have stuff downloaded or whatever.
So all that kind of happens near the end of chapter 11 and into chapter 12. And also another thing, I don't know, so he's using a pen to draw and stuff, but I don't remember talking about where he even got the pen.
Yeah, it must have just been something he had in his pocket.
Like in his pocket, because it runs out of ink, and he mentions that it runs out of ink.
Must be a really old pen or something. It's like, we got these little pens or whatever.
These things last forever.
6 years. I swear, I will die before that thing runs out of ink.
Seriously.
So he must, I don't know, he had a pen that he used a ton. Maybe he says he is an artist, he draws.
Yeah, maybe doodles
a ton or something, so maybe he used a lot of ink, and now he just, at the end of the pen's life.
Yeah. And maybe he used it for work, so maybe he was taking notes on notepads, doodling, and then he just happened to have it in his pocket.
Yeah, I guess he uses a pen a lot more than we would, but still.
Yeah. And then they talk about something interesting, is they start talking about how to kill Ulrich, and we learn a little bit more about how to kill someone with augments, which, interestingly enough, is the same way you kill a blood maker in Mistborn. You just keep wailing on them until their nanites give out, and then they'll die. It's the same thing with the blood maker. You just keep wailing on them until they're bend alloy, or not bend alloy. What is it? The metal they use?
Oh, I don't remember.
Gold, or I don't know. That's the
blood makers.
The blood makers, whatever it is, whatever it is, the metal. You just keep wailing on them until that metal runs out, and then they die. So, I thought that was funny. I was like, it's kind of similar.
Efficient, just to go all crazy on their face.
Yeah, so it's like, is there any weak points? Like his eyes? He's like, kind of. And then it's funny. Elsie's like, they don't use bows, and he's like, no, but they have guns. He's like, good, they don't have bows. He's like, the gun's the same thing, but like way better. Like imagine an arrow going 2,000 feet per second.
And you definitely can't see it. They can go from way farther away. You'll just hear a pop and you'll be dead.
And one cool thing we learned about their guns is they have really good biometrics.
Yes, biometric
which I think is awesome.
Weapons,
which is awesome. So if
I would 100%.
You wouldn't have to put your gun in a safe because they wouldn't shoot for anyone except you.
All right, what were we talking about first?
So we were talking about how to kill an augment. I don't know if they're called augments, but that's what I'm going to decide to call them.
That's a good way to put them. How to kill an augment.
Yeah,
it's short for augmented person. You just beat the crap out.
Yeah, so I guess you have to find a way to hold them down and then just wail on them until their nanobots have to reset.
I wonder if that must be just if you don't have a powerful enough weapon. Like if you have a gun like Ulrich's, then maybe you're okay.
That's true, because I think his response is in saying that Ulrich has an axe. I guess he's saying if you would fight him with the axe.
So I don't want to make this into the gun control debate we have, but imagine if we had the same biometric control thing. Like we wouldn't have to have our guns in a safe. People who are going to steal your guns for criminal activity wouldn't be able to use them.
Yeah, and you could probably even take it a step further and at schools or something have a field around it that within 100 yards of the school, guns just won't work.
Yeah, there you go.
Then that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, probably people would figure out how to get around that, but
yeah,
we won't get into that. This is the book thing.
But I think people who are smart enough to get around that aren't going to be these pathetic idiots that want to kill kids.
Yeah, quite right.
So
it's super cool piece of technology, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And we learn how big/small this earldom is. Because John asks Elston, how far away is the city we're going to? And he's like, oh, it's really far. It's another day away. And he's like, a day? And he's like, what about the city after that? And he's like, oh, that's another day past that. And so he's like, so this kingdom's 5 days wide.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Which
not that
does
big.
seem pretty dang small.
Yeah, but then he's like, oh, I guess for this time, having to walk 5 days to get somewhere is pretty dang far.
Yeah. Surprised he's not more like, whoa. I'd definitely be like, ugh, we have to ride for 5 days. Kill me now.
And we talked about this already earlier, but this is when John talks about, like, you're not the typical, like, stereotypical medieval lord, I would imagine. Like, you're not cruel or crass or anything. And that's when we talked about, like, the whole village is his family and it's his job to protect his family and, like, provide. And he takes that super seriously. And then John kind of has, like, a moment of, like, holy crap, like, I can't imagine what it would be like to live thinking that any second people could just burst out of the forest and try to kill you.
Yeah, that would
And,
be
like, the stress
so crazy.
that comes with that. And, like,
I couldn't imagine living like that either.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Oh, and I also think it's funny how they judge the guilty. So,
Yeah.
because John's like, do you guys have prisons? And he's like, what's a prison? And he's like, what do you do with the guilty people? He's like, we throw them in a pit.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, what if they're, like, innocent or guilty? He's like, well, if they're innocent, then we let them out and they go back home. And if they're guilty, we kill them.
Yeah,
So you're
as simple as that.
"Jeez, don't do anything wrong in this thing."
No kidding.
And I guess that's for bigger crimes, because for smaller crimes, they get a lashing. So I guess that's kind of typical for back then.
But I wonder where the line is between death and lashing.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, forgot to mention this, but during this whole conversation, Cephalin is gone and she went to take a bath in the ocean.
Yes.
So
Which, for some reason, John found weird the way she said it. Like, she went to wash herself. Oh, I guess I'm going to take a bath. Like, what did you think it meant?
before Cephalin left, she put out, like, a plate with 2 leather twines and, like, a couple of berries. And then she left. And then when she came back, the berries were gone and the 2 leather twines were, like, woven together.
Yeah.
And so she said, that's proof that there's a white. And then Elson's like, a free lands white far from rune stones? So I guess you bind them to rune stones. And there was a rune stone in the middle of their village we talked about earlier that glowed when Cephalin touched it. And then she says, it's not free, it's bound to John. So I don't know what that means, but apparently it's following him around and bound to him for some reason.
But it still just shows us even more that there's still some mystery to how this world is, what its magic is.
Yeah.
There's got to be something.
But apparently it's called a cofold. I don't know what the crap that is, but she can't tell if it's good or evil. So I'm like, okay. And then it gets kind of intense, and unfortunately Brandon does it again. He leaves us with a cliffhanger. But John has his ears and his hearing enhanced at the moment, and he hears horns in the distance towards the ocean. And
Right.
Ellison's like, what? Like, oh, like, it's really serious all of a sudden. And they go to see, and it was not a welcome sight. It was very obviously 3 Viking longships.
Oh, yes, that's right. It was the ships that they saw. So it sounds like there's another raid on the way. They're pretty far from their village right now.
Yeah, they're like a day away by now?
Yeah, pretty
Half
close
a day
to that.
away. But they're really close to the other city, so I bet and they doesn't really say what direction the Vikings were going.
Yeah.
Like, are they heading towards the place that they just were, or are they going towards where they're going? I don't know if it says. But yeah, that's where it ends, and it seems pretty intense. I wonder if they're going to try to fight them, or if they're going to try to rush ahead and warn them, and then they're going to fight them, and then John's going to realize he has combat augments too. So right now he's discovered his stealth augments and his protection augments, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had some sort of combat augments too.
That'll be really interesting to see. Like, what would a combat augment
I don't
be?
even know.
Like he could turn his arm into a blade or something, or maybe he can make claws. Maybe he probably just buffs up his fist or something so he can hit something without breaking his hand. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool to see.
Those would be really cool for the Wolverine. Just like, chink.
Right? Give yourself Wolverine claws. That'd be great.
And then we get another excerpt from the Frugal Wizard's Guide. I thought it was pretty interesting. I don't think we need to go super in depth. Basically, all it says is...
It's just telling you that... gives you all the reasons why your dimension will not be full of talking bananas.
Yeah. There's an infinity dimensions, and so for the infinity of possibilities, there probably is some world out there that has talking bananas, but we could search for 1,000 years looking through infinity and never find it. And so it's just chances are, because what causes these branch offs is that we're all on the same path, and then something changes. And so that's what causes branching. which sometimes can be drastic, sometimes not. Like they say, they find a lot of planets that have been destroyed by asteroids, or like just stuff like that. And so that's how I guess it's a frequent question they get is like, I want to go somewhere where humans can fly, or like I want to go where there's talking bananas. And they're like, technically, yes, that probably is out there because there's infinity, but it's impossible to find.
It's going to be impossible, yeah. Can't imagine finding a needle in a haystack would be easier than finding one of these worlds in an infinite world of dimensions.
Yeah. This is also where we get the legal note that I talked about earlier. That is, they say, please be advised that if your dimension features an extraordinary attribute, as defined in paragraph 10 of your contract, congratulations. They'll give you $100,000 to be paid after your mandatory non-negotiable relinquishment of the beacon and codes to that dimension.
So yeah,
sometimes you think like you have to have very specific things to get somewhere, and I don't know if they have like a master code and they just have to take theirs so they can't go back, or if they need that even just to get there. I don't know.
It seems like it. And it's interesting that if you find one of these extraordinary attributes, that they will just like you have to give it up. We won't. There's no negotiating it. So unless you decide to like try to hide it from them,
which seems like you could. I mean,
yeah, probably could.
There's a whole other dimension that they apparently already surveyed and decided it wasn't extraordinary, but then you find out it is, then they're not really going to look into it unless you tell them. And they're going to pay you $100,000, which is never said how much it costs to buy a dimension in the first place. Like, I wonder if that's enough to go and buy another one after they kick you out of that, or if it's not. I don't know.
We'll never know.
It also seems kind of cheap. $100,000, cheaper than any house in Utah right now that I know of.
Yeah.
To buy a whole world.
So. They didn't factor in inflation when they did with that $100,000 price.
Yeah, seriously. But again, yeah, I really like the story. It's really engaging and intriguing, and
it's really good. He found a really good and unique way, I think, to incorporate like the medieval side of things with like modern technology.
Yeah, so like he said in the beginning, like these are wizards, but not really. And then the way we learn that's not really, it's because they just have really high technology. Really advanced technology. Yeah. It's not really high technology, really advanced technology.
It's super cool.
Yeah, I agree. So my favorite part of these chapters was John's overall bumbling. He's like, he's trying to help Steph win. He's trying to convince her of certain things, while he has no idea who he is, what he can do, and his bumbling has been kind of funny, but also cool because he like learns things as he goes. And
yeah,
I really like that.
I think my favorite part was just how amazed they were by the drawings.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty good.
Like, wow. That was just so funny to me. It was more so funny to me just because he was trying so hard to impress at least Cephalin with his augment abilities and getting nowhere, and then suddenly he draws a picture. She's like, "Oh my god, that looks like me." And same with. And
I'm sure they're good because he said he went to art school for a few years.
Yeah.
And he just didn't feel good enough.
Yeah, so seems like he was good, but still like there was people who were just
So they weren't stick figures, but they weren't Van Goghs either.
Yeah,
so
that's what it seems like. Well, thank you all for joining us for these set of chapters. We thought we were good. These were really interesting ones, getting to know the world a little bit better.
Sure.
So, if you would like to share your thoughts with us, go ahead and jump over to our Instagram page. Leave us a comment. Shoot us a DM. We'll answer you.
What's our Instagram handle?
Our Instagram is Into the Pages. There's some other ones out there that are also called Into the Pages, but we're out there too. I'll have it linked if you want to check it out.
See ya. It's over.